And this teapot orbited between these two planets in the solar system, and he talked about how he could apply the same dogma and the same structure that most religions apply.
And that's conjecture, because I have done something that he or no one else prior to me has done. That's why I'm willing to be on this radio show, because I have something that's original and unique.
Well, I think that regardless of where it came from, I mean, certainly people have agreed that the result of your work has been remarkable, and I am interested in sort of the genesis of it, no pun intended, but I don't want to fight about it because I'm sort of interested in the result of it anyway. So I'm going to let Will follow up real fast and then let you answer, but then we'll take a quick break and we'll come back and we'll actually talk about some of the mathematics, I think, Marko.
Well, it's not that I challenge it on either. I'm too dim-witted to challenge it on a scientific level, and I'm too stubborn and ignorant to challenge it on a religious level. But the thing is that for some people, and let me just say that I'm just being the devil's advocate in this situation, I don't actually believe that there is a gap that needs to be, and this is a philosophical thing. This is probably not something that can be overcome through any amount of logical debate or argument or whatever. But it just seems to me that the science may be solid, but when you start to conflate religion and science, I lose it somewhere in there, and that may be my own failing.
Well, look, if I was talking about science, though, predicated based on faith or hypothesis, that'd be one thing. But if I'm talking about black and white duplicatable results, okay, essentially Russell Blake said that if anybody told him about what I had done in mathematics 3 months before he'd met me, before he'd come and taken the classes, he said to me, he would have said it's impossible. What I have in on the article that he wrote there, it's called The Mathematical Formulation of the Rodin Torus. He says I have the most coherence, the most consistency ever seen in mathematics, because I can have a minimum of 6 axes intersecting any single point in space. What I have is called the underpinning geometry of the universe. Let's say that when I'm talking about religion, I'm saying that the knowledge of everything was not hidden from the prophets or the manifestations or the oracles of God, okay? In other words, they knew technology, they knew science that we haven't even scraped the surface of. Okay, I'll rest at that for the point, because I heard Mike say we were...
Okay, let's get right back to Marko Rodin on the web at rodinmath, R-O-D-I-N, math.com, and markorodin.com. Marko, you still with us, sir?
Yeah, here I am. I'm saying my prayer. It's sunset here, and I like to say my prayers at sunset.
Good. I do mine in the morning.
Yeah.
I should. Hell, these days I try to do them all the time. My God. It's sort of rough, though, in the middle of it all, you know? Anyway, back to mathematical things. I'd like to talk a little bit about the geometric series, just so people can see the embedded, you know, the embedded loop that's inside of that supposedly infinite sequence, and that's something we can look at right on the web here too, at your website, actually.
Will, are you there?
I am.
Okay. I have discovered a pattern. I'm going to start from the top and go down. So I'm starting from the end and hardest and going to the easiest. I have found a pattern that is profound and core to all existence. The number pattern has 6 numbers in it, and then it repeats. It's 396, 693. Okay. On each side of it is a number pattern, which for within some regard we understand pretty well. Okay, but the greatest minds that I've collaborated with, professors, engineers, scientists, and just normal people like ourselves, the 396, 693 beguiles and evades all of us. It works on the 4th dimension and omni-dimension which is the Om-Life Force or higher dimensions. I leave it alone. It's just a space gap in my coils. But
that's what makes it possible. But that's what makes it. But that's what makes your coil possible.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And of course, I want to just say why we're talking about coils to people out there. For the average person who is just raising a child, a father or a mother, I want to say this: is that everything coils. Our body and our protein folding. Our DNA is helical coils. Every electric facility in every state, New York, Los Angeles, Hawaii, has these huge coils that are wound typically out of copper that have these gigantic magnets, permanent magnets, that are cutting the windings, that are creating a field, cutting the conductor of the copper, and pushing electricity to move in a forward motion direction. Everything runs on a coil. Our filaments in our light bulbs, our motors in our car, our fan, our starters. Take away a coil and we would not have society.
We wouldn't have our human bodies even.
That's right. That's why it's called Dead Can Dance. Did a song. It's The Mortal Coil.
The Mortal Coil.
Maybe it comes out of Shakespeare or something.
I think it does. Yeah. Or Blake or someone like that for sure. Yeah.
So the patterns that I have 3 patterns that I would say must exist in anything. There's nothing in our physical material world that these 3 patterns do not exist in. There's other patterns, of course, that can be associated with it as well, but these 3 patterns are fundamental in everything. The pattern that Mike is asking me to discuss now from the more standard perspective is the doubling circuit, which I discovered.
Right.
We all know the binary code. We all know doubling, which is called, like one neutrino liberates 2, liberates 4. My favorite film when I went to elementary school was the Disney short. I thought maybe it wasn't Disney, but it was where they had a room full of mouse traps with ping pong balls on them. And the man comes on camera holding one little ball, and he says, we're going to show you, how things expand exponentially. And he throws the ball into the room, and then there's 2 bouncing, and then 4, then 8. Before you know it, they're going off like popcorn.
Right.
Have you seen that one?
No, I don't think so, but I can see it in my mind.
That's called a geometric progression or a combinatorial explosion. Typically, it was thought to be infinite. It's so fast occurring on a chemical level within our bodies at all times that they say there's not a computer today that can keep track of the chemical processes in the human being.
And again, this is just the doubling of proteins and molecules and all this stuff.
Everything that we know is based on doubling. Okay? The binary code, all computers.
The way an egg splits when it's penetrated by a sperm. I mean, all
there you
of this,
go.
Right?
4 cells, 8 cells, 16 cells. Okay. So it turns out. So we know my name's Marko, and I'm going to make a Marko pronouncement. Okay, I'm going to call a shot for all of us. Okay.
All right.
People think that that's a straight line, and that people think it goes on forever. What I discovered is it curves and warps and returns back to itself. That the beginning and the end and the origin are one and the same. In other words, it warps and it precesses, like a vortex, like waters, like a spiral galaxy. Doubling warps. Okay. Because of that, I can find an underlying pattern. It's called a discrete number pattern, and what it is, it's 124875, 124875. Where I get that pattern from, in computer science, that's called a digital root pattern, or I call it a discrete number pattern. Just think with simple digits. Whenever you get more than 2 digits, or more than 1 digit, such as 2 digits, you just cast out 9s. You take it back to one number. So 10 would equal 1, 11 would equal 2, 12 would equal 3.
You add the 2 numbers together.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you reduce
10 minus
it.
9 is 1.
Right, right, and then okay. So there are 2 different methods to get the same thing. Okay.
Endless methods. Endless.
All right, and if you do that,
Would I make?
And so if you do that, you start with